Have you ever had a moment where someone warned you about something so bizarre, so unsettling, that it made your skin crawl? Imagine this. You're coming home after a long day, exhausted and ready to collapse on your couch, when your neighbor, someone you barely know, stops you in your tracks. They look you dead in the eye and say, "Don't go inside your house. Something's wrong." What would you do? Would you laugh it off, or would you listen? This is the story of what happened when I chose to listen, and what the police found inside my home still haunts me to this day. Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that like button. Trust me, by the end of this story, you'll want to share your thoughts in the comments. This is one of those stories that will leave you questioning everything. I've noticed only 98% of you who watch haven't subscribed. Come on, guys, show some love and support. Thanks a bunch to those who have already subscribed. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday. I had just finished work, and like any other day, I was heading home. My neighborhood is quiet, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. Kids play in the streets, neighbors wave hello, and the most excitement we get is when someone's dog escapes and runs through someone's garden. Safe, boring, predictable. Or so I thought. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, standing on her porch. She's an elderly woman, the kind who keeps to herself, but always has a kind word or a plate of cookies during the holidays. But that day she wasn't smiling. She was pacing, her hands wringing together like she was trying to scrub something off them. And when she saw me, she froze. "Don't go inside," she said, her voice trembling. "Something's wrong." At first I thought she was joking. Maybe she'd seen a raccoon in my trash again or heard a strange noise. But the look in her eyes, it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something darker. She wasn't just worried, she was terrified. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Did you hear something?" She shook her head, her eyes darting toward my house. "Not here. Saw. I saw someone, or something, in your window. It wasn't right. It wasn't human." Now, I'll admit I laughed. Not because I thought it was funny, but because I didn't know how else to react. Mrs. Henderson wasn't the type to make things up, but the idea of something not human in my house, it sounded like the plot of a bad horror movie. But then she said something that stopped me cold. "I called the police. They're on their way. Please just wait here with me." Building suspense. The next few minutes felt like hours. I stood there on the sidewalk, my keys clutched in my hand, staring at my front door. My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone broken in? Was it a burglar? Or was Mrs. Henderson just seeing things? She was getting older after all. Maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. But deep down, I knew something was off. The air felt heavier, like the kind of silence that comes before a storm. And then I saw it, a flicker of movement in the upstairs window. Just a shadow, quick and fleeting, but it was enough to make my heart stop. "Did you see that?" I whispered, turning to Mrs. Henderson. She nodded, her face pale. "That's what I saw earlier. It's still in there." Before I could respond, the police arrived. 2 officers stepped out of their car, their expressions calm but alert. I explained the situation, my voice shaking as I pointed to the window. They exchanged a look, the kind that told me they'd seen this kind of thing before. Or at least, they thought they had. "Stay here," one of them said, drawing his flashlight. "We'll check it out." The investigation. I watched as the officers approached my house, their movements slow and deliberate. They knocked on the door, announced their presence, and when there was no answer, they tried the handle. It was unlocked. My stomach churned as they disappeared inside. Every second felt like an eternity. Mrs. Henderson stood beside me, her hand on my arm, her grip tight. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. And then we heard it. A scream. Not from inside the house, but from one of the officers. It was a sound I'll never forget. A mix of shock and fear that sent chills down my spine. The other officer shouted something, his voice muffled by the walls. And then there was silence. "What's happening?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Mrs. Henderson didn't answer. She just stared at the house, her eyes wide with fear. The revelation. When the officers finally emerged, their faces were ashen. One of them was clutching his radio, his hands trembling as he called for backup. The other approached us, his expression grim. "We need you to come with us," he said, his voice low. "There's something you need to see." I wanted to refuse. I wanted to run as far away as I could, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of lead as I followed the officer inside. The house was dark, the air thick with the smell of something I couldn't quite place. It was sweet, almost cloying, but with an undercurrent of decay. The officer led me to the living room, where the other officer was standing, his flashlight trained on something in the corner. And then I saw it, the terrifying discovery. I won't go into too much detail because some things are better left unsaid, but what I saw in that corner, it wasn't human, it wasn't animal, it was something else entirely, something that defied explanation. The officers didn't know what to make of it, and neither did I. All I knew was that it didn't belong in this world. The police sealed off the house, and I was taken to the station for questioning. They asked me if I'd seen anything unusual lately, if I'd noticed anyone lurking around the neighborhood, but I had no answers. Whatever that thing was, it had come out of nowhere. The aftermath. I never went back to that house. I couldn't. The thought of stepping foot inside again made my skin crawl. I moved away, far away, and tried to put the whole thing behind me. But some things you can't forget. Some things stay with you, lurking in the corners of your mind, waiting for the darkness to bring them back to life. As for Mrs. Henderson, she moved away too. We still keep in touch, though we never talk about what happened that day. Some things are better left unsaid. Closing thoughts. So what do you think? Was it a prank gone wrong? A case of mistaken identity? Or something far more sinister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. Until next time, stay safe, and maybe keep an eye on your windows. You never know what might be looking back at you.